OKC versus the Denver Nuggets. Now, OKC, 68-win team,
Yep.
easily the big favorite coming into this series, the number one seed, and back-to-back losses that they've had, not game two, because game two they blew the Nuggets out, but in close games, back-to-back losses for them. But this was the most jarring one. I don't know how to encapsulate what I just witnessed from OKC. OKC had one of the biggest meltdowns in the fourth quarter and overtime that I've seen. In the fourth quarter, SGA went 1 for 8. His process the entire quarter was off. Every shot felt a little short, but the very last shot he took, it felt like he was fishing for a foul, like he was foul baiting on the very last shot attempt. It was a very bad miss. Jokic doesn't have a good fourth quarter, but he redeems himself in overtime. The Nuggets supporting cast came up big, but in overtime, OKC's offense, not enough ball movement, very isocentric. If there was no pass made, there was like at least one pass made in their offensive approach. It was just terrible overall. They just had no plan whatsoever. You could see that Mark Daignault was scrambling with, should he just have one big out there? Should he go double big? He didn't want to sit Lou Dort at all. It felt like he had to absolutely be there no matter what on the court. And the series is far from over, so we can't jump the gun here, but Denver just feels like they are more poised in these big time moments. You can trust them more in these big time moments. And the offensive execution for OKC was the most baffling thing that I think we saw from them all year.
Yeah, it was first of all, it was a back and forth game. I want to start by saying that they had a great game for the most part. Both teams giving up high powered offenses. It got a little nasty in the third, a little bit of the fourth, where you saw a lot of turnovers. The refs were kind of letting them play after. I'm sure you saw game two. Everybody was complaining about how the refs were treating OKC and stuff like that. Excuse me. So you saw a bit of a back and forth. I felt like the tide changed for OKC when Mark Dadno he called that challenge on that play that was clearly a foul by Hartenstein. And from there, you just saw bad execution to bad execution to bad execution from OKC. Like nothing they were doing on offense gave me the confidence that they were going to win that game. I mean, late, like you mentioned, late in the game, you saw experience and, continuity take over with Denver. It just felt like they knew what to do. They knew their go-to, Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic. I know he didn't have it going. He had probably one of his worst playoff games in his career tonight. But you saw late in the game, he was able to figure out some things, work the pick and roll. Same thing with Jamal Murray. Aaron Gordon comes up clutch again with another big time shot, and then those guys getting big time defensive stops. And then shout out to Michael Porter Jr. How he was able to be composed in those big time moments, able to get some clutch shots. For OKC, it just felt a lot harder on that end to generate good looks. You saw a few times SGA was able to get 2 feet into the paint, have a kick out. He was able to move the ball a few times. Alex Caruso, I thought was big in the third quarter. I would have went with him down in the closing stretches. He was huge for them. Lou Dortz, like you mentioned, he just didn't have it going, and I felt like OKC in overtime, they just got locked up. Like their process was not there. Denver was able to crack down. It felt like Denver figured them out defensively, and I felt like they should have went to J Dub a little bit more. SGA didn't have it going, and I thought J Dub did, but it felt like every possession down the stretch was a SGA ISO, and Christian Brown was able to have a great defensive night, but specifically the second half. OKC just felt very repetitive in the way they went about their offense, especially late in the game. There was no adjustments or nothing, and Denver seemed to just sit on all the drives, compact the paint, and that's how they won the game. And Denver's offense was just grooving late in the game. This is a big time win. 1-1 after getting thrashed in Oklahoma City in game two. You come home, you handle business in the clutch against, like you mentioned, a 60-win team. The experience took over, the veteranship of this team took over. And, shout out to Denver because they are proving that, they were slept on all playoffs. People felt like they were done, us included. And they have just completely, even though it is only 2-1, like you mentioned, the series isn't over. They have completely shown that they still have that moxie, that championship experience and veteranship to get it done.
I agree with you. I think that OKC really just showed that their offensive approach down the stretch, they really have no plan. OKC's loss is going to overshadow what was Jalen Williams' best offensive playoff game of his career. 32 points, 52% from the field, and 43% from the three. He was awesome, and he showed up in the fourth quarter in a way that you would have liked SGA to show up in the fourth quarter. But J Dub and OKC's offensive approach, it there was so much isolation, so little ball movement. In overtime, I was left scratching my head the most because it either felt like it was an SGA or J Dub isolation. And as soon as they drove to the basket and the defense collapsed, they had no plan. They made a pass to Hartenstein, and we saw two possessions that ended in a Hartenstein shot that was way outside of the rim and the interior. And those are the shots that you want if you're Denver. You want Isaiah Hartenstein to shoot the ball with the game on the line and in clutch time minutes. And then we saw possessions where J Dub spun into a turnover, where SGA slipped, where he got caught in traffic and made a pass to Chet, and it was a little bit high. Because everything felt really tight for them. Everything felt like they were a little bit loose with the moment. And my first thought after this game ended is number one, I think Denver has a real chance. I think we kind of understood that after game one with how they won that game. Because if it's a close game, I feel like we're all trusting Denver to come away with that. So that's their motto. Keep it close against OKC. They'll beat themselves. That's how it feels right now. But the first thought I had was if OKC loses in the playoffs in back to back years in the second round, the regular season for them from here on out is going to be meaningless. They won 68 games this past year. They were the first seed. They were the first seed last year. So back to back seasons where they're the first seed. This year, they were number one in net rating, tied with the Chicago Bulls in the 90s. We're talking about a dynasty. That's how good OKC's net rating was. They had the best defense in the NBA. There are some content creator friends of ours, Riv, that have said this is the best defense that they've seen ever in their life. They got so much praise just for last year to lose to a Dallas Mavericks team that was a heavy underdog, and to this year lose to a heavy underdog in the Denver Nuggets. If OKC does not win this series, from here on out, we are not taking what they do in the regular season seriously. It's all about the playoffs for us, and nobody is going to care.
Yeah, this goes back to the conversation we had last summer, I want to say, or at least early in the year, where I believe me and you were on the same page where we thought if OKC makes the WCF and they lose to a team like Dallas or something, with Luka, we wouldn't consider it a failure. We consider it still losing a tough series to an elite team at that same caliber. Hey, John.
Hello,
Hey,
boys.
John is here.
what's up, dude?
I've been
Camera, John?
backstage listening to you all. Just had some Wi-Fi issues. Glad to be here, though.
New camera, John?
It's not the
still.
camera yet. I
Okay,
think
nice.
the lighting's better. I still got the HD piece.
Nice. Okay. It looks great, John. All right, keep going, Riv.
Yeah, John, you look handsome, bro. Shout out to the win too. Yeah, but we had a conversation where we were thinking like, if OKC makes the WCF and they lose to one of those teams on their level, we wouldn't see it as a failure. But now we're sitting here, second round, 60 wins, like you mentioned, back-to-back second-round exits. You definitely start to look at that Giannis trade and or look at the Devin Booker or the Kevin Durant of the world, and you start thinking maybe these guys aren't going to be as untouchable as we thought. And I know this team is extremely young. This team would be the youngest team in NBA history to win a championship if they do win the championship. But like we've mentioned, time is precious in the NBA. You can have a dynasty at one point and then you can lose it all in the next moment, or you could just never win. We've seen it happen a few times, and you're sitting here now with this extremely young team. You have a lot of tradable assets. You can't go out in the second round after having a historic regular season. You just can't. So if they do lose this series, we're definitely thinking regular season meaningless. What does it look like in the offseason? Like, do they pull the trigger on one of those big time stars? Do they go make a move? How are the talks going to look like with SGA as a number one? Can he lead them to a championship? J-Dub and Chet, because SGA has been, up and down this playoff series. He hasn't been what you wanted. Well, in playoffs in general, he hasn't been what you wanted him to be. So those are going to be all question marks coming up in the offseason if they lose a series.
Definitely. And I feel like to build off what you said before, Joel, late in this game, the last couple of games, it seemed like there's been a stagnant aspect of the Thunder offense because they don't have enough playmaking. And that's led to them playing heavily out of isolation. And in today's game, you see Shea struggling in that aspect, being able to create. And I felt Christian Brown defended very well. And as this game goes on, it feels like it's more so a your turn, my turn approach between J-Dub, who has a fantastic game, and Shea, to where the Thunder offense hasn't been consistent enough, and we've seen this the last two postseasons, to where a lot of those role players and secondary shot makers are not hitting the shots they were in the regular season. They're not finding the same rhythm. And I feel like when you look at Denver, who today, Jokic plays another poor game for his standards, goes 0 of 10 from three-point land, didn't have the touch. It was different for Denver because everyone else is getting involved. Shout out to MPJ, and all of them are finding a rhythm to support and elevate him. But it feels like in all of these games, Chet Holmgren today goes 1 of 6 from 3. Isaiah Hartenstein goes 5 of 14, struggling consistently in floater range. None of those guys are finding a consistent enough rhythm because their half-court offense has been dependent on Shea being an MVP caliber scorer consistently. And when you get into these playoff settings, I felt like Shea would be better and more consistent than he has been. But we are starting to see that they need a little bit more playmaking. And they should be running more through their bigs in that aspect where of game 2 it worked pretty well. But I feel like when you look at this team moving into the offseason, it's more a matter of internal development for these guys as decision makers. I think we saw this a few years ago at Boston back from 2018 to 2022 before they got back to the finals a year ago. And so right now for Oklahoma City, they do feel like kind of a victim of their own success where the regular season has an expectation, which is championship or bust for people. But in reality, I don't feel like they're there yet. And a lot of players on this team still need more experience. And the biggest stat that I'll take away from this season, the Thunder played 24 games in clutch. That is the least in the NBA. The Nuggets, on the other hand, played more than 37. And when you look at Denver over the years, it took them time and a lot of in-game reps to figure it out in these clutch, gotta-have situations where it's a 5-point game of 5 or less minutes. The Thunder haven't had as much experience in that aspect. And I feel like until they get that, you're going to see there's a clear rigidity in them compared to a Denver team that has been here so many times. It feels like they're able to problem solve their way through a poor Jokic game, whereas the Thunder, of course, could not tonight.
I mean, they've blown out so many teams in the regular season. They washed them away, and they don't have as much experience as Denver in clutch games. In the regular season, OKC shot 37.4% from three. In the playoffs, they're at 32.9% from three. I can't be the only one that feels like they still lack elite level shooting. There's still a ton of players that defenses are more than okay with leaving open on the perimeter. And I feel like it really hurts their offense in these moments where we see in the clutch where SGA or J-Dub are trying to drive in and they're met with 3 to 4 bodies in the paint because everybody is just collapsed. This team does still feel young. They are young. They still feel inexperienced. And in these moments, I just trust Denver more. SGA has not played that well these playoffs from an efficiency standpoint. He's averaging 28, 7, and 7, but he's shooting below 30% from three, 43% from the field. He hasn't been his normal regular season self in the playoffs thus far.
Yeah, he's struggled. It's funny because even J-Dub had a great game, but I still felt like those were some tough ass shots that he were just hitting. I thought Denver was playing really good defense. When is Chat gonna wake up? I think that's something he's been up and down too. Like you mentioned, 1 for 6 from the 3-point line. He's one of the guys that's expected to stretch out the offense, be one of their best 3-point shooters. And like you mentioned, this team still has guys like Cason Wallace, Lou Dort, Alex Caruso, guys you don't really respect too much on the 3-point line. I know Lou Dort shot a really good percentage this year, but you still give them that leeway of, all right, we're gonna live or die by those threes regardless. And I think OKC, they're just in a tricky spot because, like you mentioned, John, like I think we're all on the same page where the experience is lacking mightily, and we thought bringing in Hartenstein, bringing in Caruso, those would up the experience a little bit more. But even Hartenstein doesn't have a ton of experience. It was really just last year, and I believe like 1 year with the Clippers. I think it was his last year where he really got all that experience. And Caruso's probably the one lone guy that has deep playoff championship level experience. And that's the guy you kind of sat down the stretch of the game for Lou Dort. So I thought Caruso was playing much better than Lou Dort specifically in the second half. So Mark is also another guy who lacks that experience as a coach and has to get better because he's also, I feel like he's shown his age, he's shown his experience in these playoffs. We were the same way how we were calling this team elite. People were calling Mark Dagnall an elite coach, and I don't think he's shown that either.
Yeah. The decision to not have Chet in the game to start overtime felt questionable. That kind of allowed the Nuggets to get going and get consistent looks in the defensive end, where even if Chet's not having a good offensive game, they need him out there in those key spots. On top of that, there have been a few challenge calls. Games 1, Game 3 have been questionable. I feel like Mark Dagnall is a great regular season coach, but much like maybe a Tyronn Lue in Cleveland, it will take him some years and multiple playoff runs because we kind of forget last year is their first taste of the postseason. And like you highlighted, this team, and I feel like we talked about this a little bit in the last Game 1 recap specifically, because I don't remember talking about them after Game 2. They definitely lack that kind of enforcer and connector combo that every kind of deep playoff team needs. And when they signed Isaiah Hartenstein to a 3-year, $87 million deal this summer, that was supposed to be iHeart. But it does feel like right now he is not shooting well enough on those floaters, which on the Knicks last year, it felt like automatic offense. It's kind of like Zubats in the last round where you're able to go to him in those second side actions, and he was able to score consistently finish plays. Until he's able to do that, or Chet Holmgren's making his threes and you can count on that offense to the 5, it just feels like there's a duality of you don't have enough finishing in the front court and you don't have quite enough playmaking in the backcourt. And until they can kind of combine those two things and gradually develop them, it feels a little bit like a clunky